Adam in Maryland. Hey, Adam, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, you guys were talking about intellectual property. You wanted somebody to call in if they supported it.
Yeah. Are you a supporter?
Well, it depends on what you define IP as.
IP Daily.
Why don't you tell me what you define IP as?
Intellectual property. What do you guys define intellectual property as?
I don't know that I'm ready to just spit out, the world's greatest definition, but I would say that, basically it's the ownership of an idea, that you come up with some
mind fruit.
You come up with some idea, and that because I thought of it first, you get to keep it. Or if you say that joke, you're going to have to tell everybody that you got it from me, or whatever the concept is behind it. And I think that it's a concept that resonates with people.
Yeah, because physical property, I think a lot of people would define physical property as, an object that you have the ability to exclude other people from using, right? It belongs to you and you can keep other people away. And that idea sort of extends to the way that people define intellectual property, I think, which is that you own an idea and you can exclude other people from using your idea.
So, intellectual property, see, this is the thing. I don't support the like patenting the ideas, the concepts. That is just like Mark was talking about. You can't patent a joke. You can't stop somebody from stealing your joke, or stealing like an idea that you haven't put into play yet. So that is not what I support. A lot of times people get confused between IP and copyright. They're really two different things.
Yeah, Stefan Kinsella says this too,
IP
right?
is a form of copyright. Or excuse me, copyright's a form of IP. There's three currently legal forms.
Patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
That's right.
And they're all slightly different.
And trademarks are, to me, I believe they're the most relevant and sort of legitimate form of intellectual property out there. So if you create a brown bubbly liquid and you call that brown bubbly liquid Coca-Cola and you put it in a red can and you use sort of a flowing cursive script to write it on there, I believe you're defrauding people if that isn't Coca-Cola. Do you know what I mean? If you just kind of create your own Coca-Cola, put it in a red can, as far as I'm concerned, if you create your own Coca-Cola and use Comic Sans and put it in a blue can, then maybe people are just going to try something else. I don't think that you necessarily, but when you're talking about a copyright, you're making something obviously look like something else. Then you're defrauding the customer because they think they're getting something that they're not getting.
Well, so is it the original Coke's responsibility to somehow differentiate themselves and let the customer know, hey, we're the real thing, we're the original?
No, I think it's the customer's responsibility to sue somebody who defrauds them, but I think that the original
So you want to get the state involved? You don't think there's a solution outside of using the state?
I don't think that that a tort is necessarily has to be. I think that there's going to be arbitration organizations that exist no matter where humans are going to have disputes. There's going to be dispute resolution organizations. Those organizations, you may use the term tort, and a tort can be created through defrauding. And yes, a company like Coke may decide, I'm going to get together the people that have been defrauded for 75 cents or $1.25 or whatever it is. And it's, I get enough of them together and we actually have something that's worth bringing forward. And then we can sue the people who are creating this false faux Coke.
That's one solution, but can you think of any other creative ways to differentiate yourself as the original Mark Edge? I mean, like, people do this anyway, even though it's illegal. Like, does Free Talk Live have trademarks on its name? Or?
Nope.
Okay. So that's not a very good example. But what about like in China, where there's lots of knockoffs and ripoffs, and I don't know, society seems to get along pretty well?
Yeah, a lot of companies don't want to move into China because they can't protect their trademarks. So no, I mean, it isn't functioning as well.
But a lot of people can get bags that look really similar to Gucci bags and have better lives because they don't have to pay as much for them.
There's something very interesting about sort of Gucci bags, and I think that's that's the best when you're looking at these things. But you can't copyright or you can't patent the cut of a purse. But the reason that these have these expensive purses that have these trademarks all over them is because that's the only way that they can distinguish between a $15 purse and a $1,500 purse is the trademark that's on it. It has nothing to do with quality. It has nothing to do with how many pockets are in it. It has nothing to do with anything but the name brand that's on it. So when they cover it in name brands or whatever, then
But
then
there's
they're
lots
able
of
to protect
ways
it.
to kind of sort of copy it without like,
Sure.
like Folkleys.
Folkleys, yeah.
Like, I mean, what do you think, Adam?
Well, like I was saying, when I say I support IP, it's really I support copyright and not intellectual property that you like. If somebody comes up with an idea, you can't copyright that. You can't. Somebody can take that idea. That's fine. But when it comes to things like software, books, movies, TV shows, music, that's where I'm like, look, this stuff is expensive to make, or it takes a lot of time in the case of writing. In the case of writing software, I know people who develop software, and they basically are like, look, if we now they've protected their software with dongles. I'm sure Brian's familiar with those.
Yes.
What's a dongle?
It's a little USB key. In this case, it's called an iLock 2. It's specifically made for audio software.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what happened was when their software wasn't protected hard enough, their sales dropped. The very day that their program was cracked, their sales dropped by 30%. The second day, it dropped by 40%.
What about open source software that doesn't even try to enforce? They just make the code completely open. I mean, there's a lot of really successful open source software out there.
Oh, hey, if you can provide yourself a livelihood, and by having open source software, or if that's your way of getting into the software industry, that's great. I fully support that, as long as it wasn't reverse engineered. That's kind of when you get into a gray area.
Well, I think I don't think there's. I know what you're saying, Adam, and I think the issue isn't so. What people want is what people want to pay for is convenience, not necessarily the thing. That's what we see is what's occurring. Okay, because when like with games, like let's take software with games, with video games. If you make it really easy to get your hands on the video game, and you make it and you give them good reasons to pay up money for them, like constant updates and things of that nature, like when you take Steam, for example. They will pay out. When you look at like on phones, apps, people pay $2 for an app, no problem. And so they will pay for the convenience. And so I think I see what you're saying, but I think what has to happen is that, and maybe it's unfair, but I think what has to happen is that people have to figure out how to give, how to deliver the best possible value to the person that creates the thing. Like with books, if you make the books, available through Kindle, and it's very easy to get your hands on them, people will actually pay. Instead of not. And so I think you have to show people, that much value in the delivery and not just in the existence of the product.
The problem I have with copyright is that it requires everybody to pay to get your owner to establish your ownership. So I've got things in my house that I establish ownership of by locking the door or putting up a burglar alarm or whatever I do.
Mm-hmm.
But with intellectual property of software, many companies, or music or movies or whatever it is, many companies rely completely on the federal government to enforce their copyright. So they'll find somebody who's, they're using my song or whatever, and then they'll send the FBI after them.
Right.
And look, I'm not interested in paying government bureaucrats to enforce your your property claim. So I'm fine if you want to create dongles and those kind of things. I think I believe in intellectual property. I just believe it's your responsibility to secure your property.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Is that I don't know that there's any good solution that I can think of to this issue, because it is a problem. Look, if someone makes great software, dear God, give them money. Pay for it, please, or whatever. If they make a great book, pay for it.
And movies, I think that blockbuster movies are a big argument here for intellectual property.
Right, but there's
I don't want to see one taken by somebody's iPhone in the middle of a movie theater. I want to watch a movie that way.
Yeah, there's proof in that, though, too, is that the problem was pirating movies was actually the problem of Hollywood, because they were making crap movies, because once they released great movies, suddenly the sales skyrocketed once again.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.